So, the first question to each of the panel. What does personalisation mean to you, and where are the opportunities for marketers? Mark, do you want to take that first?
Maybe I need my mic, right? So, good afternoon. I mean, for me, what personalization means is, at the end of the day, it's doing something that's useful for the people and individually. And we have been led to believe, because that was the only platform that was available, that we could, serve one message to everyone, one product to everyone, one service platform to everyone, and that it would suit everyone. So, and that was the era of scale, and a lot of us are in the business of scale. I mean, Samsung is all about scale. The idea of how do you make sure that through data, technology, you're able to contextualize and personalize not just the message, and that's to me where there were some interesting conversations in the essays we read, not just the message, but also the product, the services. And I'm sure we're going to talk about Spotify and Amazon, which came out as being in several of the essays positioned as the good side of personalization, because fundamentally they serve a human problem, and they do it without trying to push something at you, but by providing something that's useful to you on your terms.
Emma, what does personalisation mean for you?
Mark's certainly stolen my first point, which is that it's all about utility. But it's absolutely about platform, because you are an active participant in the platform. One of the essays talked about Ogilvy's big problem with billboards, which is that I didn't give you permission to show me that. I think we need to go beyond consent to active participation. Stay with me with this analogy. A colleague of mine was saying that her son went to university and they were having a conversation about sexual consent. And the point that was made was, consent seems like a really low bar. You want enthusiastic participation. That's a really good thing to aim for. And I think that you want that in marketing as well. You want enthusiastic participation. And that's the cool thing about Amazon, is I'm participating because I'm getting something useful. And there's something really good about, it's really simple, but that little line that says, this is why I'm showing you this. I'm showing you this because you bought this. I'm showing you this because of, somebody like you bought this. I'm a part of that process, and therefore I feel involved, and I think that's why platforms work. And if we have to go beyond consent to participation, that's where personalisation is really going to work.
Jason, what does personalisation mean for you?
First of all, I love the enthusiastic participation. I feel like we should all raise a glass on that. Well done, Emma. I think, to me, there's a few things when you talk about personalization, and I think of it, you can think about content. What are we sharing with people? What are we talking to people about? But then there's also the experience. And I think it's different than, Mark, what you said on the product. I do agree that that's in there as well. But the experience of how are we tailoring these experiences to individuals, not to this one-size-fits-no-one world, but the idea of what matters to you, what matters to you, what matters to you in terms of an experience. So that's the ad I'd put on top of it.
Ian, yes. What does personalisation mean to you?
So I think the biggest criticism we get, and you guys will probably all experience this as well, when you look at Facebook or Instagram, people say to us, why do I see so much data? You've got all this data, why do I see so much stuff that is not relevant to me? And for me, personalisation is about using at least one data point that makes it more relevant to you. And advertising. I mean, I read all the 25 essays that were shortlisted, and I think it's really interesting. There's this sort of paranoia in the industry where we're like, sort of, personalisation is like being creepy and coming into that whole world of like, sort of, like, I know too much about you. It's not really. Advertising is we're all in advertising. We're in Cannes. Advertising is an amazing business, and it helps you make good choices if you can deliver the relevant message at the right time to the right person. And for me, personalisation is an incredible opportunity. It's an incredible opportunity to use data to work out when we can serve those right messages to the right people.
Facebook is obviously one of the most the most personalised of media. Are you able to tell us anything about what we can expect from Facebook in terms of personalised engagement with its customers?
I mean, so it's really interesting. So I spent my whole career working in media agencies before I came to Facebook about a year ago. And when you're at Facebook, what it's all about is about the user, how they enjoy going through their newsfeed and enjoying engaging with different content, whether that's your friend or like all of us posting stuff on Cannes. And what we try to do is use all of those data signals to serve really, really relevant messages to people at the right time. And that can be big, the way we think about it is kind of probably 2 or 3 things, like big life moments that happen. So you move house, you get married, you change job, and we'll serve relevant messages there. The football team you enjoy, the day-to-day stuff that you're passionate about, and then down to the day-to-day. You're complaining about something, and you're looking at a website, and you're thinking about buying something, and then we reserve messages that help you make decisions and choose that brand, and we try to make that available to clients from a commercial point of view.
Jason, what are large digital agency networks like Possible doing to further personalised communications on behalf of their clients?
It's a good question. I think as an agency, we have to bridge what our clients are asking us, what brands are wanting to do, with what consumers are willing to do. And I think where that comes, what they're looking for in terms of that value exchange, I think it comes down to the creative ideation. As you're thinking of things, as you're trying things, as you're ideating, what are the things you're doing that are going to make it worth the consumer? What is that trade-off? And how do you do something that's not just personal to be personal, saying Ian at the top of a page, but saying something more about who they are, what matters to them, that one point of data that's going to do it. So I think from a creative agency standpoint, it is about bridging what a brand needs to get done, what their goals are, what they're trying to accomplish, with really what consumers are going to want to do, willing to do, and then finding a way to do that creatively up front.
Emma, from a research perspective, are notions of audience segmentation and demographic groupings now made redundant by personalisation? How do researchers respond to the challenges of personalised marketing?
I think if you have a fairly old-fashioned or fairly narrow view of what segmentation is or what it used to be, then you could argue that it's redundant. But we're not segmenting people by demographics anymore. We tend to segment people by mindset or attitude. And, I think Mark often talks about the logic and the magic of marketing. You still need to find a group of people with whom your brand purpose, your brand message is going to resonate. We can't have one message that fits all, and we can't have 7 billion different messages. We have to find that group of people. And the really successful brands are still doing that. Audi, Red Bull, etc. They understand a mindset of a group of people who respond to their brand, and they're able to do that across age groups, they're able to do it across territories. And they are doing that using segmentation. I think actually the trick is we probably need to rebrand segmentation. Somebody once told me that data scientists are statisticians from San Francisco. We need to come up with a rebrand for segmentation that meets that kind of thing. You have to identify a group, and that is segmentation. However you do it, you've got to identify the group with whom your message is going to resonate. So it probably needs to be updated, but it's certainly not redundant at this point.
Thank you. Mark, mobile phones are the go-to devices for personalised communication. Indeed, one of the judges' commended essays in this year's AdMap Prize posited that brand consumer sexting via mobile phones was the savour of marketing. So, Mark, tell me about Samsung's involvement in this area. How do you see mobile phones playing the role in personalised communications?
Well, and to answer, I'm probably going to expand it a little bit to not just the mobile phone, but to the whole ecosystem of products that little by little are connected to the phone, and how those products are actually participating in helping us live a lifestyle which is adapted to us. So you said you can't have one message, you can't have 7 billion messages. Recently, one thing we did at Samsung in North America, we actually launched what we call collections, and it's we call it internally collection, not externally, but you will easily know who we borrowed the analogy from. But simply because there are some people that fundamentally want to live a life which is more, they want all the benefit of being connected, connected to be able to communicate, connected to be able to, but also to pay, so with payment system, to be, and we said it's kind of like living a life on the go, so without wires. They want to be connected but untethered. So we kind of like put all these products together and we say this is like people who want to live, what we call go with Galaxy. But it's kind of like saying that's one lifestyle, that's one typology of users. There is another one which is more interested in fitness and in well-being, but not necessarily hardcore well-being. And those, for instance, I have a Gear Fit band, but it's also earphones that fit in the ears without wires. It's also a health app, etc. All of this, we called it Move with Galaxy. And then people who want to explore the possibilities of technology, the new frontier like virtual reality, we call it Explore with Galaxy. And then the people who want to create, because they like to create and socialize content on social networks with a 360 camera, for instance, we called it Create. And again, the reason I'm mentioning this is because we tried not to personalize to the individual, but at least to categorize, to cluster the way we market our products and shape our messaging, and therefore then each of those has a specific user segmentation target group, lifestyle target group. So again, and that's why very often we think about personalization, there were lots of references to creepy a little bit in some of the essays, but sometimes it is not about I know what you're doing right now and I'm going to tell you something that's going to embarrass you or annoy you. That's not personalization. Personalization to me can be, as well, it's about making it easier for people to navigate product, brands, and in our case, technology.
Okay, just picking up on that issue of creepy, it is a fact that many of the essays to this year's AdMat Prize were highly critical of personalisation in most of its current forms, associating it with creepy retargeting and blaming it on the rise of ad blocking. And yet, many of these authors are actually the people who plan advertising strategy. How do we, as an industry, get to this? And what do we need to do? I mean, is it about the technology just not being sophisticated enough right now, or is there a broader issue of, engaging and consent that we haven't really addressed? Anybody want to take that one?
I'll jump on that first. I think the interesting thing about that, and I read all the 25 that were shortlisted as well, and that was it kept coming up again and again, and part of me says it's creepy when you recognize it. It's happening a lot when you don't recognize it. So what people see, and when they notice it, when they see it, is when it makes them uncomfortable. And so that's what sticks in your mind. What you're not seeing is when it's a positive experience and everything else. So I think it ends up being kind of almost that easy thing to glom onto and grab. There are, of course, brands failing in doing it and legitimately making it creepy. But I think in most cases, it's actually, I believe that's probably overblown. And that a lot of people aren't as worried about that, would be my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, I think that's a really good point. You don't notice it when it doesn't bother you. And I remember the first time I noticed it was because it came from two brands I didn't expect it to come from. I got followed by John Lewis on The Guardian for months, and I even worked at The Guardian at that point. And, I'm thinking, John Lewis and The Guardian should not be doing this to me. I expect it from certain brands, and I will tolerate it from certain brands. So there's a really interesting point there about, beyond just context, it's actually the brand that you're choosing to do it for and with.
I also think when we think about personalization, we think a sea of data and using all of that data to do something that's, very, very, that knows you so much. Whereas sometimes, one of the examples I like to take, so we recently launched this phone which is water resistant and also has a great low light camera capability. So 2 great features. What we did is we actually used data, so we fundamentally know what device people are using, but we also know what is the weather and what time of the day it is. And that's ambient data. That's data that is absolutely not creepy. I mean, it's the weather. We can know, thanks to the Weather Channel, we can know the weather that is everywhere in the world. So what we did is, when it was going to rain, we sent messages to people saying, hey, it's about to pour in Chicago. Is your phone, ready for that? Or when, like we're all going to have right now, we don't need a low light camera, but pretty soon, unless we really don't want to capture some of those embarrassing moments, we will want a camera that captures low light atmosphere. And again, sending message at sunset, telling people, hey, it's about to get dark, are you ready for the night? We got 650% more effectiveness, of those messages, because they were not annoying people. They were actually, almost related to what time of the day it was, related to the weather reports, so in partnership with the Weather Channel. It was just not annoying, to your point.
I mean, I think that is a really interesting point. We have to think all the way through the life cycle of your experience with a brand. I think if we just talk about personalized advertising, we're really forgetting about all of those touch points that a user has. Mark's point is about people who've already bought Samsung phones. It's not trying to sell you a Samsung phone, that's trying to keep you as a loyal customer. We talk increasingly to our clients about measuring and the data all the way through the customer experience. I'm going to feel much better about a brand if it gives me a useful experience. I'm going to go back and buy from them again. It's not about giving me a personalised ad within a canvas that you found me, you found where I am, you found what I'm interested in. No, give me something useful once I've already bought your product, and I'm going to come back and buy more from it. So I think we just have to think much more holistically about the customer experience.
I do think, I want to echo that. I think the idea of personalization is too often tied to paid media. And when even looking at a lot of the essays, and when you think about the creepy examples that we can all think of, it is about paid media and less about everything else that's happening between a brand and a consumer around it, which is probably where there's the richer opportunities.
Ian, why do you think so many of your fellow strategists associate personalisation with creepiness?
I listened to all this stuff, and I think probably what we're doing at the moment is we're focusing personalisation on the transaction, and actually advertising is brands. 99.9% of the time, people aren't in the market to buy stuff. You still need big ideas. You need to entertain people, and we're so focused on that kind of transaction. I'm going to retarget you. I'm going to gain the Facebook algorithm. I'm going to go, and that came across in lots of the essays. And I think we need to just step back and go, right, what people want. They don't want personalised ads. They want really good, engaging, entertaining content. And then they want stuff that is relevant, that helps them make the best decision when they move into market. And that's the mistake we're making. And at the moment, personalisation is so sitting in that last point, that trigger point when people are making their decisions. And I think that's where the error is.
Yeah, and if I may, I also think that we very often think about personalisation as a annoying many times a day, but I also think that personalization sometimes, when you think about customer service, is a very often forgotten opportunity to actually be human. Personalization is also being human and dealing with people's problems in a way that surprises and delights them. And then you can do that personalization once. And unless you mess it up afterwards, it's going to last for a long time. So again, talking about utility, very often we don't think about personalization when it comes to just continuing to surprise people and service them once we have actually, to your point, already sold them a product.
Is it also an issue about context? Because most personalised messages don't allow for the environment in which they are received. We've all seen the often gruesomely hilarious examples of inappropriate online ad placement. Is it really an issue about getting the context right in some way?
I think context planning is the most interesting area of advertising planning at the moment, and the context that a message is served in is so important. I think I don't care about insurance most of the year, but when my insurance renewal date is due that month, I'm interested in that. That's good context. When I'm at a sports event, Coke served me something really powerful and emotive. That's amazing. Context is everything. And what digital advertising does at the moment, and the fact that mobile phones have kind of grown people's media day in the last 2 years, more than I don't think it's ever increased before this. And then I think the fact that you know where people are, so you've got two levels of context. You know what they're interested in, you know where they are, and you know what they're passionate about. And so context is so important.
The other thing, talking about personalization, contextualization, and knowing where they are, who they are, and what's useful to them, I'd like to pay tribute to the young man in the third row who uses a mobile phone for something which is very contextually relevant and personal to him right now. I hope you can see this in the back row. I don't want to know what brand it is, but that's what personal means to him.
That's a great example. I actually don't think you can decouple successful personalization and contextual. I don't think those two can be separate. I think to be successful within personalization, it has to be contextual. They should never be discussed separately.
It was noticeable in the essays that the same examples of good personalisation were cited. So, in brands, Coca-Cola, Nike, Amazon, Spotify. So few. I mean, why do we think that isn't? Well, even more interestingly, where do we see the demand for personalised products and services being satiated? What types of brands, categories, products, services do we think are most open to personalisation?
Well, I mean, certainly one of the reasons for the limited number of examples is there's a limited number of platforms, and platforms are the real growth area here. I saw a client in New York recently, and all she wanted to talk about was what Amazon are doing. And there are a limited number of platforms. That's a very difficult business to get into. I think also the reason that there are few examples is every brand that you've just mentioned there is very highly established and has a reputation for risk-taking. Most of the best things are done with an element of risk, and if you're Nike, you're very comfortable with risk. Also, I think, FMCG is going to be a very difficult area to do this in. That's a very, very, very big market. It's really difficult to personalise. Good people who are doing it, luxury, because you get a really clear idea of a mindset for a customer for a luxury brand.
There's something, you've been talking twice about platform, and that didn't come across clearly from the essays, but I think that in this world where, the reason we can do personalization is because of technology and communication and digital and data, it is true that if brands don't evolve to become platforms, then you're stuck in the record business model of music. If you're only in the business model of selling music through a record, then you just sell the product. If you think about the platform of what happens before the music, during the music, after the music, and you think holistically of yourself as a music platform as opposed to a product that is selling a record, then if you rethink yourself as a platform, I really think that then personalization in terms of entertainment and utility on that spectrum can really be unlocked to a great level. So we're not going to enter on conversation on platforms on stage, but I really think it's one of the untapped strategies is to transform brands and marketing into platform-based marketing.
Ian, can I bring you in on this now?
Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting. So music, I'm going to pick up on the music thing. I think that's really interesting. So I think So you've got some really good examples of like products and code, and they're really visible. But when personalisation is done really well, you don't even notice it. It just makes the product more relevant to you at that particular point. So on music, so for the Eurovision Song Contest, we monitored across all the countries in the Eurovision Song Contest who was like talking about the act the most, and then when they were trying to sell the album of Eurovision Song Contest, we focused on the one in that country that was the act that was being like kind of promoted the most. That's a data point that's being used in a weird way to kind of personalise stuff to you, and then you're a Eurovision fan, and it's a really powerful way to drive kind of financial benefit to that client. And I think personalisation, when it's done well, people don't even notice it. It just makes advertising better.
Jason?
You know, I think I'm not going to echo. I agree with what the other panelists are saying, but I do think there's something there when you look at FMCG being a little bit harder to personalize products. I don't necessarily think I want my laundry detergent personalized to Jason. There's a lot of stuff I don't really care about being personalized, and I do think there's this rush. There's so many areas and across all industries where it makes a ton of sense having the personalized products and services, but there's somewhere it doesn't. But that doesn't mean that they still can't have a personal connection or a way to speak to me in a way that makes sense, whether it's laundry detergent or something else.
Okay. Another common plea that came through in these essays was for brands to enter into a value exchange of data such that the brand communication can be truly personalised to the benefit of both brand and consumer. And this came up in last year's AdMat Prize when we looked at big data and creativity. We still don't seem to have squared that circle of how we manage to encourage consumers to share their data in a spirit of trust, so that we can, communicate better and personalise it more relevantly. So how do we do that? How do we actually finally now get people to share their data in a true spirit and sense of trust and communication, engagement?
I think there needs to be a commercial organisation that comes up with one of these kind of personal data management solutions. Most of the solutions that I'm aware of are kind of social enterprise, non-profit kind of things, which are really about protecting consumers. They're not actually commercially driven. So there needs to probably be something whereby there is value being exchanged both ways. I honestly have no idea where that's coming from, but somebody's going to make a lot of money out of it when they do come up with the idea.
I think there's a ton of different directions you can go there. I think getting the personalized data, getting that information doesn't necessarily require hey, give me this. It can be inferred. It can be based on experiences. And I think that's what it all comes back to, is the experiences. What are the experiences in which you're learning from someone, and how do you then feed that back in a way that is going to be more relevant for them, that is going to be a positive experience, versus saying, give me this, or I need these 7 answers. I think it's much more inferred.
Yeah, and again, I think we should never forget that it's not our data, it's their data. So really remembering that we might borrow the data, we make best use of it, but it's people's data.
Okay, let's see if we have any questions from the audience. Does anybody have a question or want to make a point about personalisation? Yes, sir, the back in the white shirt.
So, can you hear me at the back?
Yes, just shout.
So earlier this week we heard Oliver Stone talk about the making of the new Snowden movie, in which he states as part of his research that pretty much everyone in the world is under incredible amounts of scrutiny already, to the point where even our phone calls and text messages are already being read by multiple government agencies. Is this idea of people really being creeped out by personalisation even a valid thing? Because seriously, they don't care about being monitored to the most intense level right now by their own government. Do you really think that people outside of our industry, the press, actually give a crap?
Yeah, I think they do. Kind of anecdotally, friends of mine who don't work in this industry are really pissed off, frankly, about this kind of thing. The thing is, unless something really bad happens in your life, you don't know that the government's reading your emails it's gone really wrong when they pick you up in a van at 2 a.m. You know, that's bad. But we know, you know, when John Lewis's ad kept appearing on The Guardian, I knew they were doing it to me. I don't know that GCHQ's just read my email to my best friend saying, just got drunk again. You know, I don't know, so it's not visible to me. So
apparently Emma and I have different friends and circles, because I think it's heavily overblown by media. I don't think the average individual cares, especially when you start looking at younger audiences, right? When you start looking at that, I think there's another really interesting point around what's private information versus what's personal information, right? So private information could be medical, could be my personal medical history. Personal information could be types of foods I like, or even my home address, which is anyone can find anywhere. Right, so I think that idea between personal and private is still just getting mashed together and treated as one. But I think the media, I don't think it's as bad as what the media is saying, in my opinion.
Anybody else have a?
We look at a lot of data at Facebook. We look at a lot of data. We don't look at any of your messages you sent since you've been in Cannes, but we look at your kind of public posts and stuff like that, and we monitor that. And I just don't think people care. I mean, people are worried about the data and how you use it. But if we could use it in a way that makes the whole platform better, that's a really good thing to do. They're not scrolling through loads of irrelevant ads, and it just makes the whole thing better. I mean, as soon as it gets as soon as it gets really creepy, like you guys, that's bad. That's bad, and that's intrusive, and we can't do that. And we shouldn't do that. But if we're just looking at like, so this point in time you're interested in this particular brand, I think that's a good thing from an advertiser point of view. You serve relevant message. We should be the whole essay. All the essays were quite negative, or a lot of them were quite negative. Not yours, but quite a lot of them were quite negative. And it should be positive. Advertising is a really good force for helping people make decisions, and it can be really entertaining. It can be amazing. And we should embrace that, and we should not go into the creepy world and go, congratulations, you've just got engaged, why don't you think about a car, or like whatever. Don't get into that world, and I think data is a good thing if we do it in the right way, responsibly.
I do want to point out, we keep slipping back to advertising, and I did it right before you as well, but I think that it's such a natural place to go. I think a lot of the write-ups went that way, and it's just so easy to go and think about that. Personalization is advertising in that world, and I think, again, we've got to continue to think outside of that.
Advertising is good.
Do you want to add anything? Okay. Does anybody else have a question for the panel or a point to make? Yes.
Hi. I think, given the huge rise in ad blockers... Sorry, given the huge rise in ad blockers, and the obvious need to try and either reverse that or at least slow it down, what role do you think the industry can play in doing two things? One, educating consumers about what's actually going on in the background. There's no one actually reading their emails or reading their Facebook posts, but it's just an algorithm. And secondly, educating the marketers who are doing it so badly that they're making people turn on ad blockers. So what role can the industry play in actually solving those two problems?
I could take that to start with. I mean, my background is media, and I work out the audience and where to place the message. I mean, I think whoever is here from creative agencies, you guys have to make good content that really entertains people and people love. Some of the best, I remember some of the amazing ads from my childhood. You have to start building and creating amazing content, and then people won't be so worried about it, I think.
One of our companies did some work with a brand in Japan, and they tested. They showed some creative to people based on attitudinal cookie data, and then they took another group and they asked them to do a really tiny micro survey, and they served them creative based on their response to the survey. And the brand favourability rating for the group that had participated in the process was significantly higher. And I think, to this point earlier on, actually what our creators should be doing is designing great interactions. That's even more exciting than designing great broadcast creative. Think about the user experience of that interaction. That's a really exciting area to move into. And if you can get a fantastic interaction with your user that is an enjoyable one, for your user, then I think there is potential there.
Can I clarify something? I completely agree with both of you. We know what we should be doing. All of us here, I think, can completely agree with everything you said. What will actually work? I guess the question is more about how, as industry leaders.
Well, I get that, and to me, that's I would pay tribute to the work that you did by actually choosing that topic for this year's essay, because to me, I mean, the reason I do this and I read all these essays is because indeed I find it incredibly educative to read the opinion of I guess several of you guys on good and bad and good practice and bad practice, and so it was actually quite interesting and educational for me to read that there was such a spectrum, and that out of the 3 essays there was both the completely pro, I may say too much here on the essays? No? Completely pros and the completely against. So it proves the point that it's not it's not very clear, and it proves that there is good practice and terrible practice. So I think that for publishing these and having this conversation is actually part of the answer to your question. So thanks for doing this, Colin.
My pleasure. Jason, do you have a view on how we reduce ad blocking through education?
I was going to say I'll answer for the panel. We don't know. We don't know. I don't think the industry knows. And I think when you look at it, we can talk about good and bad and everything else, but the fact is why would I, if I've got an ad blocker turned on, why would I ever turn that off? Right now, there is still, again, a lot more personalization around that with brands and other things that can happen. But what's the value to me as a consumer to turn off that ad blocking? Why would I do that? Bingo. And so I think that the question is, how do you start to solve for that, or how do you find other ways to gather some of that information or connect with those consumers? I think it comes back to great content that's relevant, that's contextual, that solves a problem.
Okay, any other questions? Yes. So, jump in the hat.
How are you? There was a lot of conversation 3 months ago at South by Southwest about dark social driving up to 60% of traffic across the web. And it was sort of put out there as like the next challenge for marketers and data specialists to solve. I don't know if anybody has any points of view on that.
Ian, dark social.
It's huge. It's huge, and it's an interesting area. I think dark social is just like you just still need to have stuff that people want to share. And I think all of us as a community, you go down, you come up with an idea for your client, or if you're a client here, and you have an idea, does someone want to share that? Dark social measures people sharing stuff in ways that we can't measure it. And you just go, but we need really contagious, amazing ideas. And it's an area that the advertising industry will catch up on, and we'll start to shine a light on dark social. But it just comes down to the fact that we need to have really contagious ideas and amazing ideas and really creative ideas.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think what shone through the essays this year is that personalisation is a very passionate topic, and I think we saw some of that on the panel discussion as well today. Anyway, thank you, panel.